14 months ago, she and I actually did an AI drug discovery panel in this building.
It's been quite a while now that we've been able to use machine learning to detect phenotypes in cell images.
Comes to the development side of it, taking it to clinic, it's still regulatory focused. And do we have the regulators on board with this? They're trying.
It's a matter of getting used to proxies.
The drug delivery, how you can deliver the drug efficiently to the body, to the right cells.
Currently Senior VP of Technology at Third Rock. I do a bunch of different things, including developing the AI ML strategies for all of our incubating seed companies.
He says from hands in the soup to humans in the loop.
My name is Rhie. I have the honor of moderating this panel today and putting together this exceptional panelists from multiple disciplines, really, from academia, and of course you're behind Recursion model, which Nick spoke about today. So not just academia, startup, pharma, venture capital, investor landscape, as well as startup. So we're very lucky today in for a full spectrum treat. And to introduce myself, I'm a venture partner at One Way Ventures. We back exceptional immigrant entrepreneurs.
Hi everyone, I'm Ann Carpenter. I've run a machine learning lab at the Broad Institute for almost 20 years now. Back when it was big data, and then it was machine learning, and now it's AI. And our research has largely focused on image-based data, although now, of course, multimodal integration is a big push for transcriptomics, proteomics, and so on. And as mentioned, I'm involved in starting up 2 different companies, one as a scientific advisor for Recursion, more than 10 years ago now. It's hard to imagine. It's now a public company. And then just 2 years ago, Sizonc, which is an oncology therapeutics company.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having lights on the Festival of Lights. My name is Tarun. I am with Novo Nordisk, where I'm heading the decision sciences team. I've been working at the intersection of science, business, and analytics for the last 20 years. Prior to here, I've had stints with McKinsey and a few biotechs, which fortunate enough, we were able to take public as well. And with Novo Nordisk, we are focused on data-driven decisions across the value chain from a research to end-stage development. And very happy to be here to share our perspective.
Great. Again, thank you for the invite. And I am a replacement, so.
They said an upgrade, by the way. John said you're an upgrade.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. So I'm Kevin Munley. I'm currently Senior VP of Technology at Third Rock. I do a bunch of different things at Third Rock, including developing the AI ML strategies for all of our incubating seed companies, as well as support for many of our portfolio companies. But I also do the wet lab part of it as well. I've been in the industry for 30 years, you can tell. Started in the early 90s. I spent 15 years in pharma and then 15 years in tool development. During that time, I've started 17 different startups, had some very successful exits, some very challenging outcomes. I've seen everything all along, but part of the background of what I have is I'm always bringing in big data thoughts, as well as different ways of analytics, and more recently AI and ML. So it's great to be here.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Zhen, co-founder, CEO, and CTO of DoriNano. I've been working in the nanotechnology area for about 8 years, but before that, I had several research experience across cancer immunotherapy, biomaterial engineering, cell biology, as well as clinical medicine. I also had experience in clinical trial development. So AI is a big component, but at DoriNano, we're trying to address the fundamental aspects of nano delivery. So we're developing a novel delivery technology that can potentially address a lot of the limitations of the lipid nanoparticle and AAVs. So AI is a big component. Everyone is using AI nowadays, including us, although that's not something we focus in our pitch deck when we raised the funding, but we have taken that into consideration. Happy to be here today. Thank you.
Great. And I feel like this is almost like a deja vu moment because 14 months ago, she and I actually did an AI drug discovery panel in this building. And 14 months have passed indeed. You have said, image-based readouts are certainly moving the needles. But what, or in which field or in which discipline or I guess scope have we seen AI actually play an impact in the recent months or years? And where are we seeing like the tangible, deliverable metrics?
Yeah, so I think one of the earliest places that machine learning really started making a difference was in the image space, and it makes a lot of sense given the excitement about computer vision in the consumer world. That certainly a lot of those technologies ended up being quite transferable to biology images. So it's been quite a while now that we've been able to use machine learning to detect phenotypes in cell images. The example was given from Recursion, where they detect disease phenotypes and then attempt to reverse them. So those have been pretty exciting to see. So I would say that that's one of the areas that was the earliest adopter and has really made a ton of progress since then.
Where are we seeing, maybe a little bit of still, overpromise and hype and misunderstanding perhaps? That this could work, but it's actually very hard.
I think we can see it all across the ecosystem, from target selection, matching with disease indication. It's easy to do it when there's been a drug approved that has gone through trials that provide models and clinical trial designs, and it's clinically de-risked at that point. It's very different from going after something very novel and then pushing it through. I think we're starting to be in the infancy of that and being able to do that. So I think that is an area that we are ripe for improvement in. But where we see it being used all the time, AlphaFold, and structure-based designs, enhancements of structures, as well as enabling structure-based design through a variety of initiatives. But I do think that we have a long way to go on the target side and then also on the clinical trial side for use of AI effectively and where it could make very large differences.
Tarun, your general thoughts?
Sure. I think I quite agree with what he said because we are seeing a lot of results from the research domain, the discovery domain, but when it comes to the development side of it, taking it to clinic, it's still regulatory focused. And do we have the regulators on board with this? They're trying, but they're still a little far off. And because I personally have an experience of like working with some of those people, and you can automate or implement AI or have agents involved in specific aspects of a clinical trial. But then at the end of the day, the margin of error is very small there because the whole trial, you do not want to have any risk there. So the threshold there is quite high. In research, the threshold is low because it's okay to fail. But in trials, it's still not okay to fail because for the magnitude of the costs involved and the patients involved. So maybe it will take some while before we see the mass adoption in the trial space.
Yes. So we're, I guess, cautiously optimistic. But in terms of the scientific or data-related bottlenecks, what's preventing from actual translation for AI predictions?
I think one of the things is, and we are to blame as well, like all the pharma companies are sitting on massive amounts of data. I think in the previous talk, they talked about that as well. And we're not sharing it. Like everyone is working in silos. And it's not easy. I understand farmers have to protect their interest as well. But what happens because of that is like the models that are built are different from each other because the data is different. And the predictions will be different, which is okay. But there is no common grounding. And if we are able to federate the learning in some way, and I know it's happening in some of the areas, but that'll be a massive step forward. And then the second thing I see is data linkage across the value chain. But what I mean by that is not just patients who are in the clinical trials, but is there a way we can track omics over a longitudinal period of time and see how it changes? There are new biomarkers that it can come up, but that longitudinality will be something really good to focus on as well?
I would agree with the data dearth right now. I think access to much larger and unique data sets, particularly for smaller companies, will be a necessity, but generating that is very, very overwhelming. And so being able to access that, whether it's coming from pharma or other sources, being able to put all those data sets together and being able to use those appropriately, in these multi-layer AI systems is absolutely a requirement, and we need to come together to make that happen.
I'm also just wondering if the data generating by AI could be, the speed is higher than what we can do, like high throughput to screen those data, like those biomarkers. This is my question as well, actually. Yeah.
I mean, so I think in that case, I don't know if you're planning to ask, but a big revelation can be in the synthetic data version of it, like having digital twins there. But then again, you can have digital twins where you face a bottleneck in the regulatory side. The regulators still don't accept it. So,
what about you? Like from earlier, I guess, research, preclinical research, to what you have seen deployed at Recursion. Like, what are kind of the scientific bottlenecks that still exist?
The biggest bottleneck that is not obvious to generalist outsiders to the drug discovery world, it's like AI has transformed marketing and finance and this and that. Why not drug discovery? And the answer is because the only real data we have on diseases being cured by molecules are a certain number of clinical trials, and that number is extremely limited. And actually, we don't really have the data from those trials. We just have the outcome that this drug worked for this disease. And so when we say data dearth, if we're talking about actual human data that really matters, it's like absolutely minuscule. It's like nothing like anything else. And so I think the real challenge is in drug discovery is it's a matter of getting used to proxies, sometimes really terrible proxies, because we can't judge some new AI platform company that says, oh, I can do a much better job of this. So okay, if it's target discovery, great. Come back to me in 15 years when you've sent 50 drugs through to clinical trials and your success rate is better than 10%, then I'll be excited about it. But of course, the scale of the cost and the time and so on is just not allowing any kind of iteration whatsoever. So most of these AI companies get one shot on goal and it hits or doesn't. And most of them, even as yet, don't even have a clinical trial completed yet. So here we are. It's just a mismatch between what we wish we could accomplish, fast iterations, tons of data, and the reality of human data. Okay, so now we have to just get used to proxies. Okay, we don't say that the outcome is dependent on curing a disease in humans. Instead, we say, well, at least you should produce molecules that work in mice, or at least you should produce molecules that bind the target that you say you're going to bind. And so I think a lot of the progress in the field is made by shrinking the window of what we're trying to accomplish and trying to come up with benchmarks that reflect something of what we hope to accomplish.
Sure. So it wouldn't be like in lightning speed, but we hope that the 12 years, would be shortened to maybe 10 years, right? Incrementally. That's a big goal, yeah. And, in your respective fields, you are adopting AI for this purpose. So where have you seen kind of tangible ROIs? And the companies that you are creating? Well, I mean, this is a question for everyone. But in the VC landscape, because Third Rock does venture creation as well as you also invest in companies. So
I would say some of the early work on the antibody side has been tangible benefits for us in terms of both design optimization, removal of liabilities or immunogenicity prediction. That has been wonderful. The folding for the structure-based design initiatives have been fantastic. Virtual screening has been very, very helpful, both in terms of docking large molecules, but also small molecules. And then there are certain ADME predictions on the small molecule side from data sets that have been conglomerated that are available commercially, have been also very, very beneficial for our later stage enumeration, property prediction, and follow-up in small molecules. That has been great. I will say the final thing, and then I would love to hear your opinion on this. especially. Literature mining has been a big win for a lot of us. Being able to sort through hundreds or thousands of papers and being able to prioritize those and read those, as long as you check the citations, of course, to make sure they're real, that has really enabled us to move faster when we're looking through standard of care, novel targets, novel disease treatments, and then trying to link them down with a value creation plan, clinical development plan, so that we can start a company based on that.
Yeah, I think so. In our field, we're making the origami. We have already been using the Python actually to do the algorithm to design those nanoparticles. But we don't say that's AI yet because we don't have enough data to train to make it smart enough to design by themselves. We're also working on that actually, building the data package. Yeah.
And one of the areas that, I mean, apart from what you already talked about, that we've been using extensively is hypothesis testing. So what I mean by that is, would a specific patient population respond better? Like, are there chances? Like, can we design trials in a different way or generate insights that can be used to develop a plan? Or it can be as easy as looking at the real world evidence data, but that study may take like 2 months. But do we see and as an example, do we see patients who are on, say, our drug, Ozempic or Wegovy, and any benefits in back pain? Can we get those initial signals which can make us focus a trial on that? So generating these quick insights, and we are able to do these in 48 hours. So that's something that's cool.
And I want to pick up on the virtual screening because it's any time where you can take a many tens of millions of dollars process and that requires a lot of labor and automation and robots, and instead computationally click a button and get potential answers that you can then test and follow up is a huge win, of course, for any scale of company. But I really want to point out how useful it is for the small startup. So for a small startup, being able to essentially skip the high throughput screening phase to get initial hit molecules is really a game changer, because if you can, essentially for free in an afternoon, get some chemical molecules that look like they'll be promising, and then just go straight to testing a few hundred of them instead of a few 100,000. It's the difference between making your seed round last until the point you can get to the stages that the VCs need to see to move forward. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Of course, Big Pharma is happy to save money wherever they can as well, but I think for small startups, it allows the community to thrive on much lesser capital requirements than has been true in the past.
But Tarun, I must say, it's notoriously hard to scale, right, these pilots in a very regulated, large organization and environment, right? So how should startups maybe navigate that? Or where's the opportunity for startups, rather?
I think the first thing I would say there is just be honest with the companies. So as an example, I would say this year itself, my team would have evaluated about 100 companies in this space. And the idea there is, a couple of dozen companies would say they can identify the targets for us using AI the best possible way. But what's the best possible way? How are your models differentiated from the other 23 companies out there? What data points are you using? Do you have multimodal data sets? Do you have access to proprietary data sets? Do you have collaborations with other MGH or other hospitals where we don't have access to data? If you're building models where data is publicly available, which we already have, and you're using generic models from OpenAI or using NVIDIA, we already have those collaborations. So what's the value add that you're bringing to pharma, which they might not already have? So having that perspective of they have access to all these things, but they don't have access to this. And this is what will differentiate in getting a new molecule in the market. I think that's what makes a huge difference for a startup. Because sometimes the startups can be in that bubble that we are the best, we have the best models, but how do you showcase that?
Perfect, yeah.
I mean, Kevin, this is your world, right? So how do you know which one seems suspicious and which one has scientific depth?
You really have to look for people that are bringing solutions. How much of it is actually novel versus reused, regurgitated, open source, modified. What novel data are they bringing into this? And how much value have they shown that they've created, right? Whether they've de-risked a certain process or if they've taken it to certain amounts of, the drug development process, binding or cellular in vitro assays. You really have to look at it all together, right? Because it's really hard from a pitch to be able to tell the difference. But once you go in and start doing diligence, asking questions, you can tease apart what is actually very unique versus what is just a concept.
And just one more thing to add there, like don't mention that you can do everything. Because that's like one of the biggest red flags when we ask a question, oh yes, absolutely we can do this, or we can do this as well. Because we know the space, like we interact with 100 companies and those companies share more with us than they will share with each other. So we have the details. So if you say that we are the best in this space, that's what we need to hear. Like, and then it makes it easy for pharma or others to evaluate them for that space.
And Claire, I'm sure DoriNano is the best in your space, right? Startups are kind of feeling a lot of pinch right now because, oh, by the way, XBI is up and biotech mega rounds are up or like happening again. So people are saying biotech winter is leaving us and then maybe spring is coming. But it must still be hard for you to kind of balance between having to innovate so quickly and then also provide evidence for investors or for partners, pharma, whoever it may be. So how do you position yourself?
So that's a good question. So for us, we don't say we're an AI company because what we're trying to solve is a very fundamental challenge. The drug delivery. I think all the pharma, every company, every startup, they're facing this, how you can deliver the drug efficiently to the body, to the right cells. So that's a very fundamental question we're trying to address in our company. But we definitely have to catch up with what's going on in the society, in the biotech ecosystem. So we definitely integrated AI into our pipeline as well. So far, although we don't talk about it publicly, but we have 3 components already integrated in our R&D pipelines. So for one thing, we're trying to build an AI-driven like design interface to make the DoriNano design easier and faster. And also, we hope that everyone, even the high school student, can use that kind of interface to design very fancy nanoparticles to make a use case of that. So that's one thing. The second is that our leading indication is a DoriVac, is a DNA origami vaccine. We're collaborating with an established AI company. So they have the algorithm, this AI platform, to predict the very immunogenic antigens for us to use. So that's the other component we can always leverage. They have already established this. They have already trained their model to make the prediction. We don't have to build from scratch. So we would rather to leverage their efforts. So the third component, for any nanoparticle to get into the cell, into the cytoplasma, or into the nucleus, you have to make it smart. Lipid nanoparticle can get into many cells, but at the same time, toxicity is a problem, right? DoriNano nanoparticle, they cannot get into many type of cells. So we have to increase this efficiency of delivery for them to deliver, for example, the nucleic acid into the cytoplasma, even to the nucleus. So for that, one of the approach we use is the endosomal escaping peptide to deliver the DoriNano nanoparticles into the cell. So how do we address that? The current endosomal escaping peptide is not so efficient. So here we're also trying to integrate the AI to make the prediction what's the best endosomal escaping peptide to use. We actually have a collaboration with Dr. George Church's lab to apply for grants to solve this problem.
Interesting. And you've been with you've basically seen the growth of Recursion, and you're also with Sizong. But when do you think startups are effective when they are communicating they're an AI platform to constituents, to other stakeholders and potential investors?
Oh, I mean, are you asking, like how would I recommend it be done? That's an interesting question because we've seen the spectrum. We've seen the spectrum of Recursion being like just so bullish, like let's cure all the diseases. Chan Zuckerberg network, not a for-profit, but also like let's cure all the diseases within my children's lifetime. And then we have folks who are more modest, who are like, okay, we don't have enough data quite yet to make an efficient machine learning cycle. Let's be realistic about what we can accomplish with the data that we have. So like, yeah, there's examples across the whole spectrum there. I don't know that I have any advice. I mean, I think the person to ask that is whoever is funding these organizations, and like what works.
No, I mean, she's incredibly successful, so we should, of course, take her words with a grain of salt. But Kevin and Tarun, I guess from a pharma perspective, you've kind of touched upon it, but to further elaborate, there are a lot of biotech startup folks here. So how do you position yourself for success when talking to you?
I would say as a venture capitalist / angel investor, depending on which hat I put on for which day, I would say, one of the most important things that I encourage everybody to do is make sure you understand what a value creation plan is, right? So don't talk to me about technology. I love technology. I geek out with technology, but that's not necessarily going to get the investment. Understanding where and how you're going to create value for patients, for shareholders, for any of your employees is really important, being able to communicate that. So thinking about if I raise $1 million today, when does that become $10 million in value in your stock or $100 million in value? What do you need to do to get there? And show a rational plan that's well thought through. That will, garner a lot of, people to really take a look at it. Of course, you need wonderful technology, delivery technology, especially unmet need, but you need to be addressing a problem, that is relevant as well. But I think that is the most underlooked aspect of pitching in the community today.
And from my perspective, I think I touched upon some of it, is be very transparent and honest in where you're good at and where you're bad at. It's okay. Like I met a company where they said they cannot focus on a specific disease area because they don't have models for it. And I appreciated that because then we don't waste our time. At the same time, doing that due diligence on the company that you speak to. So for example, sometimes I have companies reach out and they would share a deck for, say, ovarian cancer. We're not in ovarian cancer. So understanding that 80% of our focus is on obesity and cardiometabolic health is what you should be doing. So send an example which is like core to what the business of the target company is. That often helps a lot. So some basic things, but they mean a lot to the other person. Like I would not look at an oncology deck. I would send it to my friend or another company, but it's not relevant.
Yep. And I think, we always want to do something to, make impact and change it for the better. So my next question is kind of about that. So how do we all work together, multidisciplinary, to collaborate better? Do we, come up with a shared infrastructure? I think someone mentioned ELNs being very, not curated correctly or aligned, right? So Nick definitely mentioned that earlier. So I would like to hear all your suggestions on how we can actually do that better here in Kendall Square. Yeah.
I have a bit of a crazy idea there. Like,
Love crazy.
if there can be like non-profit organizations who can step up here and say, because the one thing we struggle is who owns the data sets or who owns everything in the center when like we are amalgamating the data. But if it's something non-profit where like you can count on and you can say it's federated, where all the companies share their, like you said, the patient level data, so you can draw insights out of it, and anyone can get access to the whole thing and build their own models on top of it. So someone has to be at the center, and I don't know, it cannot be a pharma company because everyone will have their interests. It cannot be a VC because they'll have their interests. So I can only think of like a non-profit that can come in the center, but who can that be? I don't know.
Not an industry association. I mean, I guess that would be a nonprofit, strictly
Possibly,
speaking, but an
yeah.
industry association.
Yeah,
could help
possibly.
out
But
well.
I would love to hear, like, if you have like ideas in
Yeah.
that.
So
And I mean,
federated learning, I think, is one of the most exciting developments. So there's for those who aren't familiar or didn't pay attention to the keynote, what we're saying here is that instead of groups who have useful, valuable data, instead of them directly sharing the data, instead the model is trained on each group's individual data, so that the model shares the knowledge of all the data without actually anybody seeing anybody else's data. So you have to be a little bit careful because and they can test models to make sure that you can't reverse engineer or so on. But generally speaking, this seems to be a very viable way to share data without sharing data. And so to me, that's a super exciting approach. And I don't know who should organize it, but it overcomes that problem exactly that it doesn't completely overcome the problem of limited human data, but at least it gets us closer to some of the more expensive, valuable data that is stored within companies. Sizonk, the startup, is collaborating through TuneLab with Eli Lilly, and that I think is really pretty revolutionary. I was so excited to hear about this program that a single big pharma company is opening their ADME Talks model to startup companies, and there's no money exchanging hands, there's no equity in anybody's molecules. It's just you can use this model as long as you contribute your data, again in this arm's length shared, not directly shared kind of federated way. What a brilliant plan, because they gain access to their model, gets trained on a much more diverse set of molecules than they would otherwise see, and everybody benefits. So it's one of these like lovely things. How do we get that working across all the big pharmas is, as you say, more of a cultural logistical question than anything else. But scientifically, it seems like a solved problem.
Yeah, I think there's been a few efforts into this before. Melody was very big a few years ago, which was a consortium where people tried to do the federated learning for a lot of the ADME models. And I would say it was reasonably successful to those who could access it, right? In this, what we really need to do is make sure that it's open widely. And that's, I love what Lily's doing. It's so clever, so creative, but we need it for people who aren't, just through that Lilly Ventures. We need people who are going to small angels and the VCs and friends and families to be able to access this, to accelerate to the point where you get our VC-friendly money, because it's not always the concept stage. It's sometimes 2 or 3 steps after the concept stage when you can appeal to a VC.
Cool. So for me, for our startups, I'm always wondering if there is a market partnering system where we can find the right strategy right away. It's not existing. I agree, if some nonprofit can establish this, it will be easy for us. For example, if we don't want to build all the infrastructure of the AI component, we can always find and match the specific need we have.
absolutely. And I think that model will pick up. Like there will be companies that will provide AI models as service or something like that.
Yeah, the biggest problem is I think there's already too many, right? Because I thought what you were asking for was some kind of marketplace where it's a bit adjudicated with common benchmarks that allow you to compare. Because from my point of view, there's way too many companies that do each of the individual AI-able steps, and as a result, as a consumer at a startup or a VC considering investing or a pharma partner considering partnering, it's pretty overwhelming without shared benchmarks. Because of course anybody can produce a data set and say, look, ours does better than everybody else's on this thing, but to compare competitively across is something that requires a bit more coordination and cooperation.
So there's no benchmark that everyone kind of speaks to right now?
I mean, even for a single task, there aren't. It's not just that there's not a benchmark that people agree upon. It's often that the benchmarks are fundamentally flawed. that there are real challenges. So, for example, there's, big wave of everyone talking about foundation models 6 months ago, and already the term is going a little out of favor. It was the fastest wave I've ever seen of a buzzword. But for foundation models, there was pretty much every time somebody would publish one and saying like, oh my gosh, we've got the world's best foundation model for X, then like 3 weeks later, some dude in a blog post will sort of debunk the paper and say, oh, it turns out if you just pick, it was trying to predict mRNA levels, and it turns out if you just like predict the average mRNA level across all the samples, you beat the supposed amazing model. And so those kinds of problems make it really, I mean, and even papers from top-notch labs can end up kind of debunked in this way. And so if the best researchers at the best institutions are trying to create these benchmarks that are actually not that useful for discerning what really works, then it's a real challenge.
And a lot of it is, I think, recursive as well, like feeding that information back in some way. And my SVP of data science, like Thomas Senderovitz, he has a very nice wording to call it. He says from hands in the soup to humans in the loop. So what he means is that instead of doing everything, we should be guiding the agents. And an example of that is like we were running some tasks where we were analyzing data from clinical trials, and we saw the actual results to predicted results in patients who were obese, how the drug impacted their weight loss. And it's a very well-known fact, like to everyone who's in clinical development, that women lose more weight on that specific drug. But the models did not predict it. When we looked at their data, it was like the same. They considered it a human, but those subjective points, how do you implement it into a model, which is a known fact for everyone, but the model did not predict it. So.
So maybe my next question, which is actually my final question, can be one about our wish list. So I had said, by 2028, what do we hope to have achieved with AI in drug discovery? And my good fellow friends right here were like, no, that's too short of a timeline. Give us 5 years. So by 2030, what do we want to have achieved with AI?
FDA-approved drug assisted by AI. That's one thing.
I mean, there are some examples, yeah.
Well, I think it's 2B is the latest stage for in silico medicines, and there's another 30 or so that are at or in stage 1.
So I hope that's a very modest goal. I hope it's many, many more. Let's say 10, maybe.
I would love to see a molecule that has passed phase 1 that is a novel, whether it's undruggable or not, target indication pair that has not been through the process before. That is something I think is achievable with the right focus and the right group that puts their head together for this.
I would say maybe reducing the time from 10, 12 years to maybe 3-4 years in the whole cycle. And the reason being, ideally, I mean, I would love if the timing is just the duration of the administration of the drug, and the discovery research can be shortened. And then what can be shortened are the various steps that are involved in submissions, regulatory, the trials, and then just getting it to patients faster, because that's where the innovation is. And we're not thinking about that yet. And then what can contribute to that is the synthetic models. Like, why do we need animal? Like, it's moving. We are moving away from animals, but at the same time, do we need 4,000 people in a phase 3 trial? I don't think so. Like, how can that be 500 people and the rest can be a synthetic arm? Because we have data from millions of people out there. So
these are all like the endpoints that we wish for. I guess maybe I'll force myself to be a little earlier in the process. I think what we hope to see is a better integration of AI technologies from step to step. So it could happen in 2 ways. One is that all the companies right now that are like, we're really great at generative chemistry, or we're really great at ADME tox prediction, each of these individual steps, that those companies, they'll all battle it out. There'll be some winners that are clearly doing better than the average. And I don't know if they'll get bought up by pharma and incorporated into the internal pipeline, or if pharma will just get used to like outsourcing that step to those kinds of companies. One way or the other, I would just love to see the pipeline be more cohesive, going from step to step pretty rapidly, and in fact combining a lot of steps. When we're designing the molecule from the get-go, can we include ADME tox prediction, efficacy/binding to the desired target, as well as synthesizability, everything all together. I mean, there's systems that are aiming to do that, but for that to become really routine and really accurate and effective would be really a dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the session's being recorded, so our dreams are being recorded, so we'll come back 5 years later and revisit. But now I would like to open up the floor to the audience.
Role in academia play for the AI drug development? I mean, we've talked about data sharing or benchmark, but can academia play a huge role in this as a nonprofit? I'm just curious.
I would love to hear them answer first, actually. What should we?
I mean, they're already doing a lot of work in academia. A lot of those data were trained by the publications from academia. No doubt you're including myself, we're doing a lot of work contributing these AI training models. Yeah, we all work together for that.
That's great. And I would say so much of what pharma and biotech is built on is based on academic work. And so many of the startups are partnered with academic thought leaders like Anne that are bringing their novel insights, sometimes their data, sometimes their algorithm to really make a differentiation. But it really does start in academia. It's absolutely a necessity to advance all of these programs. And I know that part of my scouting team is constantly looking at publications and data sets, novel algorithms, code contributed by academia so we can collaborate, improve, innovate together. And that's a big part of the venture creation process.
I mean, I can say I gain all my knowledge from these people, right? Like, I'm not learning anything new if they don't do their research. So if I get stuck somewhere and I have to evaluate a company, like thankfully we have like friends like Manolis and like others we can just reach out to, and like they're experts in their specific fields and they're so kind to answer those questions if needed. And we think of models where we can also give it back in some way. So for example, we have a collaboration with MIT which is called Novo Nordisk MIT AI Fellowship, where we have fellows for a period of 2 years who are postdocs, and they work at the intersection of science and AI. And we support wherever we can, except being able to share data yet. We are figuring that out. But then they get the pharma perspective of how to get this basic research from a translational perspective to getting drugs out there or getting those models being able to use for some better way. So it's very collaborative that way.
Yeah. And I guess I would say my favorite thing that I've seen developing is pre-competitive consortia, where a nonprofit makes data in collaboration and financially supported by a collection of pharma companies who have a vested interest in that data existing. And so there's so many examples of this in the world, but I think we could always use more.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I'm a fan of basic research as well. And NIH funding is looking a little skimpy for maybe a few more years. It will be back, I'm sure. But KBB Center is also here. So, we really thank them. And hopefully there's more collaboration between Korea Institute of Science and Technology and the Kendall ecosystem as well. Well, thank you so much. And I hope we can all network and mingle. But thank you again for this exceptional panelists, guys.